There we go. Hey everyone, welcome to a pretty brief stream for today. All I'm going to do today is kind of discuss my plans really for going forward with this thing. Because as it stands right now, I need to make a set of moving lenses before I can kind of continue on with doing it for the stream. I have to make sure that some of the ideas I've got right now that I still haven't implemented are going to work and aren't, I want a working version to show you guys before I kind of bring it out. So I think my plan is I'm going to take the next week. I've been continually doing work on face shells, as well as that work with the 3D printer, because the 3D printer is going to be pretty key with this going forward. I'm going to be 3D printing the face shell for the MCU to do the moving lenses in, so I can really customize the inside half of the shell for all of the moving components. And then the other thing about that is once there's a 3D printable file, you'll be able to print it at home, or if you have a printer, or get it from Shapeways or something like that. And so it'll be really, really accessible, especially with going through how it works live on the stream. You can just get the 3D printable parts and then do it at home. And all of the components are really cheap. It's amazing how cheap all the components inside are. It's only like, I'd say like $10 worth of mechanical, just basically the hardware that you need to get everything working in there, the nuts and bolts and stuff. So I'm thinking that I'm probably not going to stream again until a week from today. I think that's May 5th. Hey guys, I see you guys leaving comments over there. Thanks for tuning in. This one's going to be a kind of a shorter stream. I'm going to go through this is the preparation of the photogrammetry process. And if you've never heard of photogrammetry, or you didn't see the last photogrammetry stream I did, basically what I'm going to be doing is taking this shell and taking a bunch of pictures of it and putting it into a computer program that'll stitch those pictures together and make a 3D representation of this shell. And that's really helpful because I sculpted this all by hand and took a long time to get it exactly how I wanted. And it makes a good base for MCU with a couple of changes. Back to the schedule a little bit. Bengi just asked if I'm going to miss the 4th. Yeah, so, typically I'd be doing a stream on the weekend and then another stream on Tuesday. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to not worry about either of those streams because, I really enjoy these streams, but I do have to kind of think about what I'm going to talk about and what the topic will be and how to approach it in an understandable way for everyone who's watching. And so that is a little bit of an extra element to have to think about, so it kind of slows me down a little bit. So if I'm thinking, and I did 12 streams in April, so it's really amazing how much content I'm putting out right now. So I think kind of to celebrate how many streams I got out in April, I'll take that week off, so I get that week to work on the ASM2 face shells that I need to work on, and then in the meantime I'll be able to print the components for the moving lenses and get all of that assembled before the stream on Thursday, I believe the 5th. I think that Thursday is May 5th. I'm not quite sure. I'll look at a calendar to figure that out for sure. Or maybe is that Thursday the 4th? Either way, it'd be a week from today on that Thursday that I would come back again with the moving lenses. Because another thing is I'll need a mask. I'll need a finished mask to go along with it. I could just do the moving lenses without it, but I'm kind of, this is going to be one of my most popular streams ever, probably. So I need to kind of have it polished and presentable. So that's another reason why I'm going to take this little bit of time off. Hey, Prestoy, thanks for tuning in and saying hi. Thank you for the compliment as well. That's what I really love about these streams. And I'm thinking more and more about going over to Twitch. I don't know if anyone watching has any opinion on YouTube versus Twitch. If you want to chime in right now, if you don't like Twitch or if you don't like YouTube, it's helpful for me to know that, because I know that a lot of people like this. Twitch is kind of the more standard medium for this kind of stuff, but I also like having my YouTube channel constantly getting more and more content on it. Yeah, Matt just said he prefers YouTube. So there are definitely some aspects of YouTube that I prefer, but I know that there's also kind of a I know that there's also kind of a community of people on Twitch. Kind of the biggest thing about that Twitch aspect is that it just has that big audience that just is kind of flipping channels. Yeah, I wasn't really very familiar with Twitch, and then I had a friend who started a video game stream, and so he'd ask people to come and watch on Twitch, but you basically I think you can watch without a password and username and stuff, but I don't remember well enough. I just know that I had to create an account. Maybe to comment, I had to create an account. Okay, so right now, since I'm doing the photogrammetry process, I've painted this face shell that I have here flat, because when you're doing photogrammetry, if anything is glossy or shiny, then that's going to mess with the photogrammetry process, because it'll see, like, you see this spot of light right here, this white spot. The the picture would have that glare on it, and the photogrammetry process would think that's just a white spot on the model. And so when it looks at the model from this angle, it's looking for that white spot, but it doesn't see it because the white spot is now kind of over here. And so if it's really glossy, that's an even bigger problem. It's already kind of a problem here. So you want as even lighting as possible. Like that harsh light is coming from my window I have open. So I might even want to close my blinds when I do that, because you just want even lighting, not a lot of shadows, but also, not a lot of like really harsh, bright white lights. And that's why I painted it flat like this, so that it gives it just a really flat color. And then you'll also notice I've got like splatters of yellow and brown, and that's just to add contrast, because that's what the photogrammetry process looks for. It looks for contrast. It looks for where this particular little area of the lens meets this gray spot and this yellow spot and this black spot, and then it looks for that in every single picture, and it uses that as its basis of creating the model. So you want to help it by adding that contrast, adding a lot of like contrast and fine detail that it can look at and go ahead and create a really detailed model from. Got off path here a little bit. And so I'm doing a middle line here because it helps in just the modeling process. Because when you're modeling anything symmetrical like this, you're always kind of modeling from a mirror line, like in the middle. And so you give that to yourself here. Although you'll kind of find the natural mirror in the program, which kind of gives you something to work from. Oh, another thing about this is I'm actually going to be peeling off this other lens. I have the ASM1 lens sitting over here, and I just recently, an hour ago, put a coat of primer on it because I'm going to do both at the same time. I'm going to do the MCU on one half and the ASM on the other. So I'm basically, because this is the ASM shell, and if I get the lens on there, I have the reference of the ASM on there, but then I also have the new MCU lens shape to work from. So I'll do both of those at the exact same time. And then that gives me, I can work from the same model, creating my digital ASM1 face shell. And then you'd be able to print the face shell and the lenses, and then, get your own lens however you need to, like the sunglass lens, or someone else sells lenses, so it'll just be a lot more accessible that way. So this middle line up here is complicated because when I put this like groove in the forehead, I put that groove in there several years ago because I've always had a forehead seam in my patterns based on the movie, and so I put that groove in there so that seam has somewhere to kind of go, so the shape can flatten out a little bit. And it works really well for masks with the middle seam like that, but if it doesn't have a middle seam, then you can kind of see the forehead groove. So that's why I've stopped doing that, and probably why no one else ever did it to begin with. So. But the cool thing about 3D, the 3D printable one is, I could have a version of the file that has a groove in the forehead, or I was even thinking that the structure of it could be such that there's just a slot that seams could kind of fit into, but when there's no seam there, the slot is not large enough, not like kind of rounded like this one. This one kind of is rounded like, kind of like a, what, like a, like the groove above your lip, like it's kind of rounded off around the edges, and that isn't good. You want like just a straight curve shape with the space in the middle gone, so that spandex just stretches straight over it and you don't even see it. But that's kind of the one of the flaws of the vacuum forming process. Okay, sorry, haven't even looked at the comments in a while. Jonathan mentioned possibly streaming on both YouTube and Twitch. I've looked into that. I think basically the only definitive information I've found so far is that Twitch will get mad if you are promoting any other platform other than theirs. But I don't know what that means based on like if you just stream on Twitch, but then essentially have the stream available on YouTube. One cool thing about Twitch is that it records your comments too. I've been saving the comments. I copy them after most streams. There are some streams where I'm not able to get back and get the comments. But I've been saving the comments after each stream just so I have them for reference for whatever reason. And Twitch kind of would be like playing your comments if you were watching this after the fact. And that would be really nice because then you'd see who I was talking to and what they were saying. Oh, wow, the stream's really like laggy today, I think. Okay, so yeah, just kind of catching up on comments there. Like I said, this is going to be a shorter stream today because I'm just kind of getting into this stuff. And I don't even know if I will actually begin the photogram process because I might need to kind of tweak some stuff. Okay. Looks pretty middle. One of you guys just mentioned the new Spider-Man game, I think. Are you talking about the PS4 one? If that's the case, I haven't had a console in a long time. PC is just the best way to play video games. You don't have to pay for internet, I know that's not a problem with PlayStation, but yeah, I love playing games on PC, so if it's not on PC, I usually don't play it. Yeah, PC Master Race all the way. It's just more fun. And games are way cheaper on PC. You can get them on sale more easily. And also, like if you get games on Steam, if you've never heard of Steam, look into it because a friend introduced it to me a few years ago, and Steam is just awesome because you have like all of your games that you buy on Steam on the cloud, and if you're ever like on a different computer and you want to play a game, you can download it again on that different computer. It might take a long time depending on the game, but you can do that. And that's just like one of the coolest things. I've done that a lot. Oh, that sucks, Chris. Chris just said that his Amazon's taking forever because they messed up, and so it's taking forever for him to get his printer. My first printer was like that. I got my first printer shipped from China from GearBest. It was before they were shipping from their American warehouse, or if they even had an American warehouse at that point. And so they were shipping from China, and there were just issues with like customs or something. So I had to pay a little bit extra to have it shipped faster. Like it was going to take 8 weeks or something to get to me if I didn't pay a little bit more to have it shipped with DHL. So that kind of was unfortunate. But my second printer got to me like lightning fast. Okay, so I think I'm tracing this right now. Yeah, I wanted to show you guys. I designed this a few weeks ago. This is for my nephew's birthday, but this is kind of like one of my biggest, 3D printing endeavors yet. It's just like a motorcycle helmet for a little kid. It's a little bigger than I was anticipating it to be, but it'll be good because it'll always fit. I'll just have to put a lot of padding into it. But it's really cool. Just goes to show you like what you can do. I have a lot to learn about, how to separate models and the optimal way to put them together. But basically, so far, this has just been me designing it. It took me like a couple of hours to design it a couple of weeks ago, and I've just been printing it ever since. That's part of why I got another printer is because, you can just, something like this that has 10 or 12 pieces to it will take weeks if you can't do it twice as fast. And so, and then another cool aspect here is the visor. The visor that will be on the front of the helmet here. I had to print it in two parts, obviously, but the visor for the front of the helmet, I printed this as a vacuform buck. I'm actually going to vacuform this like I do with my lenses, and one thing I've mentioned when I've talked about vacuforming is you can't really vacuform like plastic like this because it melts it and crumples it in. So what I did was I actually kind of printed it hollow with a slightly, with a little bit of an inner structure to it. And so I'll just glue these two portions together, and then I'll fill it with hydrocal. I'll just pour hydrocal into each of these openings. Then I think I'll just like shake it really hard to get all the air bubbles and everything out, and then just kind of continue to do that until it's filled up and solid, and then sand it and refine it so that it's a solid hydrocal lens buck at that point, and make it look really glossy and smooth. Because when you're vacuforming a lens or something clear, it needs to be like as chrome smooth as you can get it, your buck, or else any little like bumps or ridges or anything will reduce the clarity of your eventual lens. Like if you look at any professional lens casting, their molds always look like chrome metal. Well, they are chrome metal. I mean, they're mirrored metal. So it's so smooth that there's just zero imperfections and you can see through it perfectly. So that's kind of what you have to do there. But yeah, so that's just kind of that helmet process really quick. It's cool to show you what 3D printing can do. Oh, that's funny. Chris had to have his school print lenses. I imagine he had like a deadline or something. That's pretty funny. I bet they liked working on that. One thing I'm excited for when I release the files that I do is I'm going to try to have it as printable as possible. Like I'm going to try to break things apart so that they're in printable ways. Like it'll just be a matter of buying the file and kind of putting it into Cura and inputting your settings, and then you could get it printing really quick. Like I'm not intending to just only the shell file, and then it's kind of up to you to figure out how to piece it together and all of that. I think I'm a little off on the chin here as far as symmetry goes. So I'll just kind of fudge it back over a little bit. Okay, so now I just need to kind of draw lines all over it, and I have a bunch of different colors of Sharpies, and that will be for the contrast I was talking about earlier. It just needs different colors, different things like that to be able to decide what that point it's looking at is. And it doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, they could be curvy, whatever lines. I'm just trying to kind of, what I'm actually trying to kind of do here is I'm actually kind of trying to sketch the mesh that I will eventually have in the 3D program. Because I've found that like when you have a photogram model like this working on it as a base, I mean, if you have the mesh sketched, it makes it really easy to figure out where to put your points and like everything like that. So I kind of just like to, well, I've only done this once, so I've got very limited experience, but basically sketch out the way the mesh will look. Sure, why not? We'll do like a bumping over. I don't want this to take forever, so I'm going to be a little less precise. Because my experience is it doesn't need to be perfect. It's not like, it looks like Slade from Teen Titans, the original Teen Titans. Matt, I'm glad you asked that question again. Matt just asked, how durable do you think it will be with the mesh structure to the shell? I'm glad you asked that because the way I'm going to do it, I'm going to, test it. I'm going to really be sure to figure out the strongest way to do stuff because there's going to be a spectrum from, these shells just have holes in the mouth and holes in the forehead. And, kind of what I've talked about with the shell, and other makers have done this before me, so it's not like anything new. With 3D printing a shell, you can do this kind of like mesh structure. You can kind of just do like a hexagonal shell mesh all over shape-wise. And that's cool because it's got so much ventilation. But Matt's question is how strong will that be and how durable will that be? Because, if you think about it just being kind of like a 3D printed mesh, it might be kind of weak and have be like flimsy and break or something. But my thoughts with it are that there are a lot of things that you can do. Like, because it's 3D printing and not just vacuum forming a shell, there could be like sort of I-beams underneath, like kind of structure underneath because you have a little bit of space between the shell and your head. You could do kind of like structural ribbing that will keep the strength, the shape and the strength of the shell, and that'd be even better than this because, even this is kind of flimsy and gets squeezed when it's pressed and doesn't break, which is good. Which is, the advantage of ABS is it can get bent and pushed quite pretty far before it snaps. But it'll be a matter with that one of just kind of finding a middle ground, like, and then if the mesh is too open and like you can see the mesh maybe through the fabric mask or something like that, I'll just end up kind of bringing it back to like the original shell, kind of sliding on that spectrum I was talking about of like between face and forehead holes or just holes all over. There will definitely be a happy middle ground. And for the moving lens one, because of all the mechanics and stuff, the moving lens one's definitely going to be solid, like all the way, just like forehead and all the way around the eye. And so that one will be pretty solid there. And then also, I'm thinking of ways that they can be in multiple pieces. Like if it's separated in half, and it has an ability to like actually come apart in half. Like maybe you take 3 screws out or something and it can be separated in half, and then it's a little easier to like put in a backpack or a suitcase or something. So there's a lot of neat stuff. Prestoy asked, "Is this one 3D printed or is this a paintball mask?" No, this is my face shell that I vacuum form from black plastic like this. That I sculpted the shape of it and went through the very traditional process of making it with vacuum forming and more traditional stuff like that. But I'm doing this process right now because when I do the photogrammetry, it will give me all of the work I've done, all of the sculpting, and really getting the shape refined by hand. I really am happy with the shape of both my ASM1 and ASM2 shells. They can be even more perfected more, which I'll do in the design process. But yeah, so it's awesome to be able to just kind of get this shape I'm really happy with straight into the computer, and just go ahead and work on it like that. And the more of this you do, the better. I could show you my the ASM2 mask that I did, and it has a grid all over it. And even I noticed even in the areas between the grids, it struggled kind of to create the shape. So the grid just really does a lot for it. Just doing this, just scribbling this shape on it. And you want to kind of like define certain shapes. Like what the line I just did was kind of like the shape in the middle of the chin. And what that does is when it's looking around, it always kind of has that as the defining point of the shape of the chin. And so it's easy for it to build the shape of the chin from that. I'm really excited to do that moving lens tutorial though. It'll be like a tutorial / just kind of like going through my process once I've got my working version going. It'll be interesting to see how useful the information is to you guys, because you need a face shell. Oh, that's true. I mean, one thing I've kind of been worried about is that you need a face shell, you need all this stuff, but with the fact that I'm doing it this way, which is a big reason why I'm doing it this way. This is hurting these Sharpies. I'm finding the colors that don't work here very well. But yeah, so you'll be able to get the 3D printed face shell, and that'll make it a lot more accessible. Because since I've gotten more 3D printers, I will of course catch up on the ASM2 shells I owe people first. But I foresee it being a lot more reasonable for me to be able to sell these things if I just have to basically be printing them and offering you guys a kit with just all the 3D printed parts, and then you can get everything else you need in different kits from different people, or it'll give you a lot of control over the piece. And I won't be putting it together for you, but I mean we've seen that that it ends up with people just not getting their stuff for so long. So this is all just me trying to find a solution to that, because that is like one of the most present problems in my life, is that I just can't get people their stuff ever. One thing for my ASM2 shell, when I did the modeling in Blender, I kind of modeled it with the eye opening. I'm not going to do that this time. I'm going to do the shell without the eye opening, because then it's easier to edit the overall shape of the shell, and then you can go in and cut the lens in out afterwards. That's how inexperienced I am with modeling programs, that I make kind of like simple errors like that. So I'm definitely still mired in the learning process with 3D modeling, but I'm already really enjoying it and what it can do. One of you just asked what the lines are for. And to those of you who might just be tuning in now, to those of you who or might be tuning in, this is for the photogrammetry process. And what photogrammetry is you take a bunch of pictures of a model, like this face shell, and a computer program takes those pictures and creates a 3D model based on the pictures. And so I'm adding these lines to the model, to this face shell, because it gives the computer program more to look at and to figure out what it's looking at and where, because it's looking for little points of contrast. It has no intelligence. All it can look for is like where the blue meets the orange right here, and then look for that in every photo, and then because of that, piece together the shape of the shell. And so what I'm concentrating here on making sure that it's just not too much of the same colors coming together. Yeah, Dalton said it too. Yeah, Matt, that'll be pretty cool. You'll get one of the last of my like kind of multiple evolutions of face shells. Although, well, I mean, the cool thing about 3D printing is that it even bypasses the eye, the cutting out the eye holes and cutting out all the air holes, and like even that is kind of labor intensive just for like shipping a kit. If you're shipping a lot of them. So I really am excited about the fact that it would just be like, start printing, just kind of would start printing in multiple chunks, and then ship the multiple chunks. And I want to design it in such a way that it's really easy to come together. I would love it if there was a way to just get it to snap together and snap apart, so that you could just like, oh, there's two halves of the shell, and when you're wearing it, it's a nice sturdy shell, but then when you're done, you can just pop, separate them, and you have, a more, easily transportable shell. So I'm being sort of quick here. The good thing about this orange one is it runs into the other inks and brings a little bit of the color with it, and that's just creating, inherent contrast inside of the line, which is helpful for the program, because the program can make millions of reference points. That's funny. Yeah, you could absolutely have a button, like if it was clipped together, like one of those clips that you have on like those plastic clips where you press the clip and it comes apart. That's the great thing about 3D printing, is you kind of start to design with that mindset of like, well, what would an engineer do? An engineer making like a backpack buckle But the shell coming apart isn't that crucial. They're not. It's not like they're that big of a hassle to transport. It would be nice because then it would want to come apart rather than break. You could have it so that if there was ever too much stress or pressure on it, it would just, separate into two pieces rather than break. But that'd be a pretty complicated design. Yeah, and if you're just tuning in, the other thing about this stream, I've said it to the people that tuned in at the beginning. The point of this stream is that I'm probably going to take off until next Thursday, so a week from today. So that means just no stream this weekend and no stream on Tuesday. And the purpose of that will be to get a version of these moving lenses going, ready to go and functional, so that I have that in hand when I'm, going forward and talking about it with you guys, rather than going through the first one live. And, because I love doing this stream. It's so much fun, but it also is a lot. It's definitely a big X factor in that it's just like it complicates things. Sometimes I get distracted and I don't get a ton of work done, and I kind of just talk about stuff. But that's funny. Hey, all you guys! Shout out to you guys. AABC Cosplays asked if I prefer the Civil War design or the current MCU one. It doesn't look like it's changed too much to me, and there was not a ton of it in Civil War, so I don't know. I liked the way it looked in Civil War. The thing I didn't like in Civil War was the way they made the iris shrink and it separated the eyes really far apart. Like there were jokes on the internet about like, an edited picture of Tom Holland with his eyes really far apart, because that literally was how it looked. Like the eyes were small and in the center, and that's how an iris works. I imagine some technically minded person had final say in the decision, because they're like, that's how an iris works. An iris closes like this. It closes down. It goes into the center. And some creative person was like, yeah, but then the eye is covered because the eye is right here. The eye is really, really close to the middle of these lenses always. And so when it closed, it was definitely like closing in front of his eyeball. And so I think they changed that. I changed it on my moving lens so that when it contracts to a point around the center of the eye. It doesn't contract just straight inward. It contracts down into the center, because that's what it would need to do for a person to be able to see, and for it to do its claimed purpose of like focusing his attention. I mean, you wouldn't. What is his attention? Just like straight out and at weird angles. So that was one thing that bugged me a ton about the Civil War one. I just saw your comment. You meant the practical one. I only saw a little bit of the practical one. I'm not sure why they decided to go all CG at the last minute. They must not have liked some aspect of that practical suit enough to at the very last minute do the whole suit CG. It was pretty crazy. And then there were no pictures. There were pictures like from the trailers and stuff, but there were no action figures. There was like so little information about that suit all last summer. Kind of just like what little production stuff creeped out. And then of course the DVD came out, and that gives you the most information. Very weird. I'm kind of catching up on comments. Usually when I go silent like that, that's what I'm doing. I'm reading what you guys are saying and trying to like get to the beginning of the conversation. You guys are talking about like the moving components. I imagine you're talking about the actual movie, like what would happen in the movie. I know there are guys out there that are doing the moving lens components with Arduino stuff. But one thing I've noticed, every one of those people that's kind of doing that kind of stuff, they have ridiculously tiny heads. They're tiny people with tiny heads, and still their shells look like Ninja Turtle heads. Like they have these huge Ninja Turtle heads on their tiny bodies, because it's just, I don't have a ton of experience with Arduino and stuff like that, but it looks like I don't see how, for a normal person with a normal sized head wanting to look like a normal sized head Spider-Man, you'd be able to fit all that stuff in under the shell. It's like these little tiny head people are able to do it, but I'd never be able to get the moving components Arduino wise. I had to do it puppetry, and then you still have to get all of your other stuff, like your battery and your board, you have to put that somewhere. Like, where does that go? Are you just gonna have a web backpack all the time whenever you have moving lenses? I mean, that's a way to do it, but there's all sorts of little things. And I honestly just haven't seen moving lenses yet that don't look kind of, just two components that go up and down, and maybe not even that, just one component that goes up, and it's just kind of, that's a pretty simplistic way of doing it. My method has 12 individual moving parts just for the lenses to get the really nice smooth movement. The key that I'm excited to see come together is getting it all really flat. Like, my next design, I think, is going to really just sandwich everything together really well and make it nice and flat, which is like key. You need it to basically be like this flat, because if it's any deeper than that, it starts to, my last mask had that problem where it's deeper, and people see that and they notice, and they're like, oh, well, what's the deal with the super deep eyes? And then all the other people with moving lenses, they all have super deep eye sockets because their stuff is so thick. Cool. Good job, AABC Cosplays. He just said that he puff painted some stuff, and it's on his Instagram page, so check that out. It's in the comments. Oh, that's funny. Eminem just asked if I plan on coming back to YouTube. YouTube. That was like a mix between Utah and YouTube. Back to Utah for Comic-Con. Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. I've actually been thinking, since I've been doing this live show, I kind of want to get a collection of my stuff together and start to travel around to different conventions around the country. Go to the bigger ones and the bigger regional conventions and actually like get a booth. Look into the prices of getting a booth, because a lot of artists go to conventions and set up a booth and have like posters and things like that. But it'd be really cool to just kind of travel around and go to all the regional Comic-Cons and meet you guys, and bring some of my like neater projects and just kind of set up a booth. And I was even thinking it'd be cool if I did that some point down the road, because that'd probably be a little ways down the road. If I did do that, I could do live streams from the conventions that I go to whenever I'm at like a different convention at my booth, because that's one thing I realized with Monster Palooza that was at the beginning of April. I tried to do a live stream there, but as soon as I got there and I got my phone out to start doing the live stream and started setting everything up, I just realized I was like, there's going to be no internet here. There's way too many people. Whenever you get too many people in a small space like that, everyone's using the internet to look at their Facebook, and there's a million people using the internet, and so it's hard to plan on doing like a stream or something. But if you get a booth, I think you can buy permission to the internet, which is actually ludicrously expensive usually, but that would be pretty cool to do a live stream from different conventions. Yeah, that'd be cool to I know that like you East Coasters, you do like Dragon Con, and I know that I think it was Chicago just had their Comic-Con or something recently. But you hear about that. You kind of hear about people across the country having their conventions, but you kind of just don't put too much thought into it, because it's like, oh, well, it's one of those conventions I'll never be able to go to. But yeah, I'd really enjoy that. And also, I think I'd enjoy having a booth more than just walking around the convention. I've always gone to conventions and walked around and chatted with people that way, but I think I'd probably enjoy it more, honestly, just setting up and letting people walk around, and then that way you're not it's not a luck whether or not they see you there or not. It's more likely that they'll walk around and see your booth. I've got a project I'm working on right now, super secret. I only work on it once in a blue moon, but you guys have heard me talk about it a few times on this stream so far, my Chromat project. That kind of is what made me think of going to conventions, because once that's done, if I set up a booth and set that thing up on display, I think people will really, really like that, because that thing is like perfect for putting in like a glass case in the middle of a booth. So I'm really, really excited to get that done and get that out. But it's so exciting, and I'm so confident in it that it's like, well, let's get these ducks in a row first. So that's why it's all this I've been kind of concentrating on over the last couple of weeks, because really I think that Chromat is kind of like the next big thing for me, in a lot of ways. So I'm still working on that every once in a while. I try not to. It's one of the reasons why I got another 3D printer, because the Chromat project is going to have a lot of 3D printing, and I want that to go faster. So I've done a lot of lines on this thing so far, which is good because it just gives the program that much more to go on. That's funny, Dalton. Well, I don't remember what your question was, but yeah, that's part of the stream. I'm just kind of here. I mean, if you've got questions on stuff you're doing or making, or oh yeah, I still haven't done that that stream where you guys send in pictures of the stuff you're working on. We can like talk about it, and maybe talk about like other things you can do, and like stuff like that. So maybe what I'll have you guys do is, if you want me to like kind of look at your stuff and discuss it in a stream, because that would be like in a week or two at the soonest. But yeah, send me an email with your project and your pictures in it at madebyMcLean@gmail.com. So basically what's down below in the title without spaces, madebyMcLean@gmail.com. And you can send me pictures of your project, or Wyatt Wyatt sent me some pictures of a face shell that he's working on, and that was part of why I did a craft foam tutorial the other day. Okay, so another thing about doing the photogrammetry process. For me, ABC Cosplay just asked what my plan is, if I'm going to do screen printing or puff paint. I'm actually probably just going to do the dye sublimation for now for the MCU suit. Possibly down the line, it depends on who's willing to work with me on making a screen printed version. But at the moment, I've only really talked to Fernando about doing that, and only talked to him about it briefly. So it would be, he'd be doing most of the work on the screens and stuff, because what's it called? Screen printing can be difficult. I've talked about that a few times in the stream. So now I'm kind of doing the same thing to the lens here. I want as much detail as possible, as much contrast and information as I can get. It's windy. Got a very windy day here in LA. But I'm just going to do the dye sublimation suit of the MCU suit, but you could totally puff paint that. I know a lot of people, they hear that and they're like, what? You can't puff paint that one. But I've seen it. I've seen a couple people out there already. Some of the ones that I've seen puff painted don't even look like they're on a dye sub. It just looks like red fabric with the texture puff painted and the webs puff painted. Which, is something you can do. It's just a little bit of elbow grease. A little bit of your time, and then you get a product that you get to keep forever. or until it wears out and falls apart. But then you can make another one. Because by that time, there's already a new design. there's going to be new Spider-Man designs coming out every 2 years for the next like century, until Spider-Man becomes like Cowboys and Indians and is uncool to the little kid generation. Which, man, isn't that weird to think about? I've never really thought about that. Like Spider-Man being kind of like Cowboys and Indians. Who knows? Because I mean, it's once it inundates culture, it kind of. Although I think it has to do with little kids gravitating towards like the most amazing and interesting aspects of life, fictional or not, like princesses and monsters, and superheroes are a big part of that, because it's we as people, especially from a young age, we care a lot about people. We care about people, our abilities, what we can do. It's like sports. Sports is what people can do. The ability to run and jump and throw and punch, and that's a lot of what superheroes are. And so it's interesting to us and to kids to explore that. Like, what if this guy was so powerful and could spin webs and was fast and had a spider sense? And that's interesting. So unless it's some kind of like future sci-fi, that'll always be pretty interesting. Or I mean, unless like Spider-Man becomes a reality, who knows? Have some guy who has actual web shooters and can swing around and shoot webs and is super strong for whatever reason. Then it's not as interesting, because then it's just reality. It becomes humdrum. I definitely agree. ABC Cosplay, he just said that he thinks that there's an element of the costume design that's really good in Spider-Man. And I totally agree, because Spider-Man came out in the 60s, kind of in the height of weird superheroes. I mean, just kind of weird, like, about everything. Like, there were just superheroes about everything. And if you kind of think about it, Spider-Man's just kind of another one of those, just like, oh, look, bug-based superheroes. And he had red and blue spandex and big white eyes, which kind of doesn't make sense for a spider, but it all just kind of worked. The blue and red spandex with the big white eyes, it just kind of like works as his look, and it's appealing. It's just kind of like a cool aesthetic Spider-Man has while doing cool stuff. I think that's why there's so many people out there that are so into this stuff. He just has a cool look, and you can become Spider-Man very easily. Maybe not physically with the abilities, but you can become Spider-Man in how people look at you. If you're dressed as Spider-Man, there are bound to be people out there that will kind of treat you like Spider-Man. So I'm still kind of just making the wireframe of these lenses here. I'm using different colors because it's just giving. If I'd used all the same color, it'll have to struggle to find that contrast, unique contrast. I could also be using black a little bit more. I'm kind of underutilizing that. So, yeah, I guess this hasn't been that short of a stream. I was thinking it was only going to be a couple minutes long. and I was gonna basically just tell you the plan for the next couple of streams. For the last couple of streams, while I've been doing facial work on the side, not enough though. I've been kind of splitting my time between facial work and 3D printing, of course. That's always my struggle. Is it's like okay, I have to do only facial work. Well, I'll just do a little bit of MCU work on the side to get me going, and it's so hard to focus on the stuff that isn't what is exciting and challenging. And so, that's a huge struggle for me. So, the last few streams have been kind of, like, oh shoot, well, I need to be working on face shells, so I can't work on this. And, it's kind of slowing down the actually getting the MCU shell out. So I'll be back in a week. I'm not signing off right now yet necessarily, but, I'll be back in a week from now, and I'll shoot to have a moving lens by then, and that will be the moving lenses that are going to go to Alex, who so patiently has been waiting since last year. If you guys remember or have seen my work from last year, I did a contest for free moving MCU lenses. In hindsight, I probably should have started with contests for like free prints or a free face shell. I kind of just jumped to the hardest thing right away, but he'll get it. Better late than never. That's what I say. Yeah. And then the exciting thing about that, getting the MCU shell done at the same time as getting the 3D printable face shells done is I'm going to start doing all kinds of contests again, because I think that's a good way to just kind of give you guys the chance to, if you're not able to afford the 3D printer, if you're not able to afford the just having it printed somewhere else, I mean, you could still enter contests and, cross your fingers and hope to get it that way. So I want to start doing that again. So now I'm just poking dots, because in the last photogram I did, inside of these squares, it struggled. The program struggled because it just needs this. It needs what I'm doing here as contrast. And that's actually why I spray painted that yellow on there. You can see it a little bit better on this brown. I try to splatter it. You can see that the brown and the black and the yellow are all kind of splattered. I try to get it like, that you don't want that when you're usually spraying, but I tried to flick the paint on so it kind of does this dotting action I'm doing right here. I don't want to do that throughout the whole shell. I do want to sign it though. That's pretty fun. Cool. And then that's in the photogram, which is neat. Yeah, I understand that too. Winter Boy just said his biggest struggle is time. Absolutely. Especially if you're in school, because school is tough because, you're learning the things you need to learn to be a functional adult someday. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know, doesn't it make sense that your interests kind of drive what you learn? So that always kind of bothered me about school. It's like, I want to do this stuff. I want to do the fun, creative stuff. I'm tired of, learning about poorly explained math principles. Like math, I really disliked math in school just because they've never been very good in the American education system at kind of like making math tangible, like why you learn math. In my experience with school, it was just such a, like, here's math, do it. Okay, why? What is this? Just weird numbers. I mean, like, okay, obviously addition, multiplication, all the simple stuff, but then it kind of gets into more difficult concepts, and unless you have a good teacher, there's just not a lot of emphasis placed on, like, here's what math does in the real world. Yeah, that's funny. ABC Cosplay. ABC Cosplay just said that the suit texture is really rough, and that he met Tom Holland and got to, feel it, touch it, and feel it. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. What's it called? Screen printing can be a really rough texture. Really quick, what I'm doing right now is I'm putting scale right on the lens. I need definitive scale. So I'm measuring an inch. So that'll be helpful to know that this lens is like exactly the right size. Architecture's cool. That's a good use of this type of skill set or kind of way of thinking. Apparently, also, I mean, if you're young and wondering what to do, if you're interested in this kind of stuff, I heard recently that 3D modelers are really in demand, and that makes sense. There will always be a need to have models made in 3D, and to have objects created. And so, if you're good at that, if you can practice and get pretty good, I think that's a solid thing to pursue. And then you get good at making stuff too, and can create all the stuff you want to make. Oh yeah, Buckshot Bill just asked, do you think it's possible to get the eyes moving separately via the method I'm doing? Yeah, maybe I've mentioned it before, but yeah, it's separate. It was separate on the first one I did too, but the problem was that it required a lot more force to move the eyes than I was expecting, so I wasn't able to move them like separately. I had to just squeeze my trigger to move them both at the same time. But with the one I'm building for the future streams, I plan on reducing that a lot of the friction and the tension that was in the mask in that first test one, so it'll be easier to move them separately and get individual expressions out of it, like a puppet. So you guys will see that soon, because that's what I'm gonna do over the next week. Is I'm gonna bust out a version of it, and then I'm gonna kind of build like a demonstration version of it once I have that done and everything. This is just me getting a little more contrast on there. You'll see Kiefer. It's cables, so you have to pull a cable. I haven't really solidified the method I'm going to do for it, but I think when I get into the mechanics of it, you guys will really enjoy it. It's pretty simple and funny and straightforward. Winter Boy. That's one thing I'll say though. He said he's going to do a rubber band closing mechanism. Be careful with that, because immediately what I say, and this is kind of one thing that has worried me about this just in general, is that there's a lot of tension. There's a lot of things being pulled tight, and if you were doing a rubber bands are liable to snap. I'm using like fishing line and stuff in mine because I don't want anything snapping around my eyes. But if you have a rubber band, keep in mind that, like, especially if you're pulling on it really hard, like if you're doing some kind of moving mechanism, it might snap on you rather than move the lens you want it to. Because like I said, I was surprised when I got my moving lens done how much friction and force there is on the components and the different like layers and stuff, because you have to press it flat. If you don't press it flat, then it wants to bridge the gap just directly to be between where it's connected inside of the face shell. So not out where the lens is, like deep inside. It wants to close deep inside. So you have to push it forward. And so that pushing forward action creates a lot of friction between the lens components than there was before that. And that's something I learned once I kind of got all of the pieces together on the last one. But yeah. You'll kind of just figure that stuff out as you go. There are better things than rubber bands out there. You can buy just corded elastic, which is like the elastic in your like waistband or for like sweatpants. But you can buy just like a cord of elastic, so like string, like basically like a rubber band. But the difference is that it's much stronger. Like elastic basically doesn't snap. Like you can pull on it and get to a maximum threshold, and you'd have to pull really hard to get it to snap at that point. And it's stronger too. Like the stretch is stronger. Like if you think about a rubber band, like if you tied a tennis ball to a rubber band, like just a straight string of rubber band, the tennis ball would like go really low and then stay low because the rubber band is weak and then probably break. But elastic would probably just make it go like a bungee cord. A bungee cord is a thicker, more advanced elastic kind of thing. And so that's why you want to get to know your materials, so you know when there's an alternative that's going to be stronger and work better. I actually used a little bit of elastic in my design for some tension, but it wasn't enough tension. It wasn't didn't do enough pulling. Okay, so I'm going to keep drawing lines on this left side, and that'll probably be it for this stream today. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I had a lot of concurrent viewers today on a day when I wasn't really even doing anything that interesting. Although I say that, and I think there's kind of a tone of like, what is this? Like, what is this photogram thing? It's kind of a weird thing, like drawing all these lines over this weird Spider-Man face shell. This is like so amazing. The ability to just take pictures of something and scan it into a 3D program. Because, there are 3D scanners. Like I could buy a desktop scanner and then it would be a lot easier to just scan something small like this. And I might do that a little ways down the line. But the good thing about photogrammetry is you could photogram this entire room. You could do an entire scan of this entire room. See, Buckshot's trying to eke information about my moving lenses out of me. You'll see, Buckshot. I'll definitely have it. I mean, if you look at my video from WonderCon, there's information there. It's funny that people just it's given me confidence in my method. No one's noticed it. You can see it in my video at WonderCon, and no one's even commented on it. So that's how seamless the working of the mechanisms for mine is. It's not controlled by like the jaw or the eye or anything like that. It's controlled by the hand, like a puppet. Yeah, I just need to get a version of these lines on this side. This would probably honestly suffice, just in general. But you'll notice when you start to do photogrammetry, well, first let me mention that the photogrammetry program I use is called Agisoft, Agisoft, Agisoft PhotoScan Deluxe, and that is a program used for ripping apart these photogram models. But yeah, you'll notice if you ever do work with Agisoft and use photogrammetry, which I recommend because this is like it's the 21st century. Just going to be able to build things so much faster this way. But if you ever work with it, you'll just learn what works and what doesn't work, what gives you a lot of information, and where does it have trouble with. Another thing that photogrammetry has trouble with are textures like hair and things that are sort of iridescent. So like if you think about hair, depending on the angle someone's head moves, their hair kind of reflects light differently and kind of changes colors and shines the light like that. Photogrammetry really struggles with iridescence like that. It just really confuses it when an object has color changing properties on its surface and you try to do a scan. It'll just get confused. Sometimes when it gets confused, you'll notice it has like points just floating away from the object because it just doesn't know. It just doesn't get where that point was supposed to go. And so it just guesses as best as it can because that's all it's doing in the first place is guessing. But you can help it out. You can guide it by giving it all of these really nice high contrast lines and colors to operate off of. Oh yeah, you guys just mentioned Guardians of the Galaxy coming up. That'll be exciting. I think that'll be premiering the night of my next stream. So maybe I'll do that stream with the moving lenses. Knowing me, just don't be surprised if there's some kind of delay. I mean, I wish it was different, but I do frequently have delays and stuff that come up. But I will, I'm going to be shooting for that moving lens there, so that'll be pretty cool to have the moving lens ready and then go watch Guardians of the Galaxy. Although the trailers and the commercials for that movie have been so awful on TV. I swear the little scene that they keep playing between Rocket Raccoon and Groot is going to be at the end of the movie. And it's going to be, it could be, I could be wrong. It could be at the beginning of the movie and it's just kind of like showing like what their adventures are like at that moment. But if that scene between Rocket and Groot and the bomb is at the end of the movie, I'm going to be so mad because it's just it'll just make it so hard to enjoy the movie because it's just like, okay, well I know this entire time we're going to end up in some kind of asteroid with a bomb and Rocket and Groot, and I mean I don't want to think about that the whole time. But these commercials, they have to do that. They have to, oh, look at this funny moment at the end of the movie. So I'll say again, just for anyone tuning in, my plan with the moving lenses is to kind of take this next week and get a set working and get a mask done and get basically it all together for a Thursday stream a week from today. I think that's May 5th. Have it all done and ready for a stream that day. Just basically on the moving lenses. I'll go through it. I'll go through how it works and how I do it, because by that point I'll have my version and, we'll have pictures and stuff. Get mine out there a little bit. And That'll definitely be a, a different video, to say the least. I think that'll maybe be the favorite video up to that point for everyone. And especially the fact that I'll be doing a video about the moving lenses and like what it takes, but I'll also at that point have the file done. So you could print it yourself. You could actually print it, and I'm thinking about ways that I could get it so the different lens components are printable flat. You basically would just print them flat and then maybe bend them a little bit, or print them in a flexible material like PETG that will be able to flex a little bit for the movement of the lenses. But if that's the case, I'll just let you know that you need to print in PETG. So you'll be buying the STL file and then a roll of filament, and it'll be at least a fifth or a sixth of the price that a full face shell costs for me. At the moment, if I were to actually be selling face shells ever. Yeah. Yeah, talking more about movie trailers and stuff. Oh, yeah, you're right. It's bad when you're watching a trailer for a comedy and all the funniest parts of the comedy are in the trailer. That's always been the worst. And yeah, Suicide Squad, that was another one. I mean, they're just, when they sell a movie, they just don't care if they're ruining it for you. All they care about is, piquing someone's interest that wasn't interested in it before. Like, they know that you, the fan of comic book movies, are probably going to go see it no matter what. So they just need to get, that person who's not a fan in the seats, because that's how they get those really big blockbuster, paydays. Okay, I'm going to go around the edges a little bit more here. It's good to define the edge just because it kind of loses it otherwise. Okay, this is great. I've needed to photogram this one for like 2 or 3 weeks now. Buckshot. The most available place to go, I don't know what, I haven't gone there in a while, is Fabric on Demand. That's kind of like a good starting place for dye sublimation. Is they're good. They'll let you just put go onto the website and you need to know how long your file is, like how many yards your file is. But if you don't know, guess smaller. Like if your Spider-Man file is usually going to be between 3 to 5 yards, I'd say. And so during the process of Fabric on Demand, they'll say, how many yards is your costume, or your, not costume, they print all fabric. So how many yards is your fabric that you need printed? And so sometimes you don't know exactly how long your costume fabric is. Just guess something under, and they'll charge you for that. But when they look at your file, if it's any bit bigger, they'll just charge you again for that extra that you missed. So that's better than paying too much and having them forget to tell you that you've paid too much, which I'm not accusing them of ever doing that, but it's better to just guess a little too little, or guess too little, and then have them send you an invoice for whatever else. And then Dalton asked, sublimated, what is that? So if you have never heard of dye sublimation or don't know what it is, dye sublimation is what most of these, Spider-Man costume makers, I can't get my keyboard to go away. Oh, well. Dye sublimation is the process of printing onto like spandex and stuff. Like if you've a lot of like Under Armour shirts, or a good example is if you've ever seen those leggings that girls wear that are printed with like money, or they have like the muscle design. That's dye sublimation. It's just a really effective way of printing a design onto stretchy fabric. It's not the best. Hey, thanks, Brian. Thanks for stepping in. Dye sublimation is not the best because the colors can be kind of white and fadey, but you can print so much stuff on it. So if you've never heard of dye sublimation, that's what it is. And I've done a little bit of Photoshop pattern design. I actually haven't done any kind of like dye sublimation pattern design yet, which is like adding textures and adjusting the color and all of that. But I am going to get to that because I love this stream. I love just being able to cover all kinds of different topics and kind of teach everyone some of the things that I've figured out, sort of the hard way sometimes. But I like it because I'm no definitive teacher. I'm not a teacher in a lot of ways. I think about this stream sometimes, and it's like, is it wrong of me to do it in a sense of me being a teacher? In that I don't have good like foundational knowledge. Like I don't know the basics on a lot of these things in a certain way. So I think it's important that I say that, like, not so much a teacher as I am just doing stuff, and you can glean stuff from the stuff I'm doing. And I'll tell you about like my thought process to get there. Just keep in mind that I'm very self-taught, and I'm not doing the like end-all be-all methods here sometimes. Like a lot of times in the comments, people will be like, well, why don't you just do it like that? And I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that. You always have just done it this way and didn't give it a second thought. And so, that's something to keep in mind. I'm just telling you how I do stuff, letting you see my process, my weird process. But yeah, so it looks pretty good. Pretty marked up here. There might need to be a little more something here. All right. Yeah, I agree, Buckshot. Buckshot said that anyone who's experienced in a subject can at least give advice to new people. Yeah, I definitely agree. But what I will say is that sometimes I look back and on my learning process, and I'm like, maybe I should have focused more on the basics, like more on a good fundamental, knowing the names of everything, and going to school for fabrication. And Adam Savage had a good I don't know, I think it was a tested video or something where he talked about like fabrication colleges are a good place to go because they just have everything. Like if you're prototyping products, like just every type of fabrication, 3D printing, every machine. I mean, when it comes to fabrication, you want every machine in the toolbox. So like I kind of regret not having gone to some kind of fabrication based school. I mean, it's not too late, I still could. But go to some kind of fabrication based school, and they'd have every tool in the toolbox, and you would just get to learn so quickly. And from the masters, like, okay, well, you need to do this thing, well, use that, use this machine that does this. But I like the way I've approached things. I think I've kind of approached the whole making things the way I did, just because it's always kind of just been a game to me. It's just fun. I kind of want to tell stories. I've wanted to like direct and write for a long time, and that's kind of what I went to school for. I kind of got a broad theatrical education in school, and this has always kind of just been more for fun for me. But it's I kind of see it as a way to make that other desire come true, to do kind of storytelling of some kind. Which has kind of always been a problem for me because, I want to do like storytelling, like directing and writing, but people look at my work, which is kind of this is the tangibility of my work. I don't spend a lot of time writing and directing things. I spend time making things like this. And so people see that and they're like, oh, well, you do that. You don't do writing and directing. And I mean, it's true. I mean, you do what you do. But I do want to like branch out more into that. I think that's more interesting. And this is fun, and I still want to do it, but I want to do it to the ends of my storytelling. I want to use it to tell stories. Yeah, thanks for tuning in, Brian. That's cool. Have you ever tuned into a stream before? I won't know your answer for a while because of the delay. Yeah, Brian does a lot of cool puff paint stuff. Like I was looking at Brian's most recent MCU suit, and that one looks just like I was saying earlier. It looks like it's just puff paint, like not even a dye sublimation underneath. And you can do that. I think this suit is conducive to that because it doesn't really have like muscle shading or. I'm still going to dye sublimate it because the good thing about dye sublimating it is because then you have a guide for puff painting. You know where the mesh or where the kind of the checkerboard design goes. Because otherwise, if you don't have a pattern underneath, you'd need to have a stencil or a ruler or one of many ways to keep your puff paint pattern lined up. But I think a dye sublimated pattern that you could just go through and just kind of like if you're doing the checkerboard, just puff paint it and just poke each little dot. I think that seriously is going to look close to, obviously not the same quality as screen printing, but pretty close. And it's funny because I've worked on my mask a little bit, and while working on the mask, I kind of realized like why they kind of did some of the things they did, because like I know on the actual mask, the seam, I think the seam comes like right under here. It doesn't actually follow on any lines or web lines, and then there's also a seam that comes in like up here, like above. And I'm realizing it's like, oh, okay, they didn't try to hide the seams inside the webbing, because that's really hard. It's really hard to do on this suit with the like inner gap, to keep that inner gap really precise. Like I tried my best with the chin down here, but even then it's not super perfectly lined up. The gap is still a little too close in some places and a little too far away in others. And so that I can see why they didn't bother with trying to hide the web underneath those web gaps, because that would be really difficult. They basically just focused on keeping the web gaps printed on, and then have their seams kind of coming from different angles, like down here, and then there's one that goes up and around. It's a hard, like when you're making a pattern, it's a hard decision whether or not you want to follow what the studio did, like the choices the studio makes, because then you're kind of moving towards the ultimate replica, because you're some of the seams and even some of the imperfections are the same, and some people like that. But then there's also the perspective of you're moving towards, like, I like to go off of production like posters, like the usually for every movie, there's kind of like a CG poster where, Spider-Man is like swinging, or, there are a couple for Homecoming already. And those are always kind of like concept art of the character. They don't have like seams. They don't have how the suit goes together. They just have what the suit is supposed to be, like if it was a comic book character. And I love those as reference, because then it's like, okay, now I don't have to focus on how they did their pattern and all that. I can just focus on how I'm going to do my pattern, and base it off of the aspects off of the concept art. And I think that's just a lot more fun. It kind of gives you more reign and going towards a super cool look to it. Okay, so I think that's basically good for today. I marked up this shell for photogrammetry. So now the next step would basically be to get it with some scale. That's what I have this this Home Depot paint stick for. It has the inches kind of marked clearly, and then I have 1 inch taped off with black, so that I know that this black square is just a solid square inch. And that helps you just put it right next to your model while you're photogramming, and then when you move it into the 3D modeling program, you know for sure that this is 4 inches. So once you get that to scale, you know everything else is to scale too. And then it lives in the computer at the exact same scale it is in reality. So like I could even 3D print pieces that would fit onto this. So that's like the advantage of photogrammetry and stuff, and why it's such an awesome thing. I've even photogrammed my body out on my porch a few months ago, or like 2 months ago, and it wasn't great because it's really hard to photogram something living. Like I had to just stay as perfectly still as I could, and then there were parts like my hair was too iridescent, and the program struggled with that. But I got a pretty functional model out of like size scale model of my upper torso, and I've used that for a few projects now, and it's just so cool being able to design off of like real life scale measurements like that. So cool. If there aren't any more questions or anything, I think I'll go ahead and sign off with that. And like I said before and a couple times throughout the stream, I'm going to be back a week from today. So I'm going to be off for the next 2 streams. So don't plan on those on this weekend and on Tuesday. And then I will be back on Thursday with my goal to be a fully functional moving lens mask, and then we can talk about it and discuss it and go forward from there. So cool. Thanks for tuning in today, everybody. And it was fun hanging out with you guys for like an hour, and I'll see you guys in a week. See ya.